If you feel restless when you are not being useful, this is for you. If silence makes you uneasy, keep listening. This is not about age. It is about what you were trained to believe about your worth. Have you noticed how obsessed we are with generational labels? Millennials killed diamonds. Gen Z cannot live without phones. Gen X is the ignored middle child. But the generation carrying the most blame is the baby boomers. Born between 1946 and 1964, they are blamed for the housing market, mocked for tech struggles, and reduced online to a lazy, okay boomer. Beneath the noise is a person under constant psychological pressure that rarely gets named. You were told you would change the world. 50 years later, you were told you ruined it. You are the coworker who will not retire because work defines you. You are the parent who shows love by fixing things or sending money because words were never taught. Here is what few admit. Your inner life may be the most burdened and isolated of any generation. You feel it most in the morning. You wake up early for no reason. The house is quiet, too quiet. Your hands feel restless, almost guilty when you are not being useful. You move from room to room fixing things that do not need fixing, searching for a task that justifies your existence. You built the life you were told to build. You followed the rules. You climbed upward. You collected what mattered. But at the top, the view feels thin. There is a dull pressure in your chest. You are waiting for gratitude that will never come, or an apology you do not know how to ask for. It is easy to call this normal aging. That is too simple. This is not age. It is a psychological mold that hardened decades ago. A blueprint was set before you were born, shaping how you understand love, value, and silence. You live inside a mental structure built for a world that no longer exists. The tension you feel is that structure grinding against reality. This is about conditioning. Deep down, you believe your way of seeing the world is the right one, and everyone else lost the instructions. That certainty is a shield protecting a more fragile truth. To understand this mix of pride and loneliness, we have to look at effort and the low anxiety that appears the moment you stop. You cannot simply exist. You have to do. You define yourself by what you produce, not by who you are. This is not just work ethic. It is role engulfment. The self disappears into the function. Raised under war and scarcity, you absorbed a transactional view of human worth. The belief is simple. I must produce to be safe. Love was conditional, on behavior, on grades, on being quiet. Your brain learned that achievement equals safety and stillness equals danger. You no longer work for money. You work because silence lets the thoughts in. This drive is a high-functioning flight response. You are running from the fear that without usefulness, you might not matter. That fear shows up when younger people demand balance or protect their mental health. It feels like an insult to your suffering. This is not just a values clash. It is the collapse of the belief that the world is fair. You were taught that hard work earns reward and suffering has meaning. When others get reward without suffering, it shakes your reality. It suggests your sacrifice was optional. That thought is terrifying, so you defend struggle as virtue. Because if it is meaningless, you spent decades in a prison with the door open. The belief becomes this: sacrifice equals worth. You guard it because it is how you buy self-esteem. If it loses value, you feel empty. This spills into relationships. At family dinners, people laugh and share stories. You have nothing to add but advice or correction, so you go quiet. No one notices. This is not coldness. It is cultural alexithymia. You were taught emotions are messy and unproductive. You learned to repress, but repression does not erase. The feelings you buried still live in your nervous system. They surface as irritability or a need for control. The belief becomes that feelings are dangerous. You try to love by fixing problems. Fixing is safe. Feeling is chaotic. And the hardest part is this: you know something is wrong. You feel the distance but have no words for it. Control tightens with time. And now comes the pattern you resist, a quiet fear that follows you. You hold on to objects, old papers, big houses, old stories. You correct details that do not matter. You cling to your narrative. As the end feels closer, your ego grips its legacy tighter. You speak louder because you feel less heard. You hold on to the past because it is where you were strong and in control. Silence feels like erasure. This is not stubbornness. It is survival. This creates tension between who you were and who you are becoming. It steals the present, and it leads to the final conflict, acceptance or regret. You are reviewing your life, the bonds you kept, the ones you lost, the dreams you postponed for safety. The bitterness you feel is the taste of unlived life, the shadow of who you could have been. Time feels short. You want to know it mattered. You want forgiveness. But you are waiting for permission that only you can give. You waited your whole life for approval. Now you are the authority. The walls that once protected you now block the light. The rules, the restraint, the silence. These were tools for a world that is gone. You are carrying a map to land that no longer exists. Relief does not come from effort. It comes from release. You are allowed to be tired, allowed to not know, allowed to grieve the selves you sacrifice for duty. Validation will not come from success, possessions, or obedience. It comes from knowing you are enough simply because you exist. You carried the weight for a long time. It is time to set it down. The silence in your house does not have to accuse you. It can be peace. And when you stop proving your worth, you may find the connection you wanted was waiting in the vulnerability you avoided. Ask yourself one question today. If you stop being useful to everyone else, who would you be to yourself? Answer it for you, because naming the pattern is where change begins. If this resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe.